What's up guys, Duke Sloth here with the second part of my how to counter a god in 2 items or less series. As always, this series is just personal opinion. If you have a better idea on how to counter a god, please let me know in the comments below. I don't want to say much more. If you want to see the whole introduction, please watch the first video. Let's get started with the actual gods.
There are some who will never learn.
While Athena is one of the strongest gods at the moment, she's also fairly easy to counter. To avoid her taunt, it's very helpful to either have Magi's Blessing or Purification beads. Greater Purification if you can afford it. On top of that, it would be recommended for at least some players in your team, maybe even the support or the solo laner, to have teleport. So whenever she uses her ult, somebody can be there in a situation of danger. Not teleport to gods though, because the cooldown of that is simply too long.
Time to shine, Suku! No! We don't have time for a nap!
I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Awilix is countered so hard by beats, it's not even funny. Simple reason is, if you get knocked up, you can't use beats against that. But if you use beats the moment you get pulled, it completely cancels the pull. You're not longer considered knocked up, but pulled instead, and in this status you can use beats. Without the pull, Awilix's kit lags a lot. It is a very huge problem for her, and while Magi's Blessing is also good because it can prevent the knock-up in the first place, beats are always the superior choice against an Awilix. Other than that, if she deals a lot of damage, go for some physical protection, but usually preventing her ultimate is the most crucial part of countering Awilix.
Who's ready to party?
There's not too much to say about countering Bacchus. He is a support, so he obviously has a lot of crowd control. Beats will always help against him, so will Magi's Blessing. For a support, he has fairly high damage, so at some point you might consider getting some magical protection in. I'm not gonna name any items here because basically every item will work as long as it has magical protection on it.
Time to eat.
Most of Bakasura's damage comes from his 3 in combination with auto attacks and his ultimate. Midgardian Mail is a perfect counter against him because it slows his attack speed and it has health on top, which kind of counters the true damage that his 3 deals. Midgardian Mail is a very situational item and you can't always afford to build it. A more flexible item that can replace it and is also very strong is a witchblade. In terms of actives, slowing down Bakasura is not the best choice. Curses work on many other characters, but with his ultimate he can get CC immunity and he can body block you with the minions a little bit. He can slow you down even more than others. So what I'd recommend is getting sprint 2 or even 3. This allows you to sprint out of his ultimate and away from him, which cancels out his high attack speed. As long as he doesn't get any auto attacks on you, he will struggle. He has his leap to close the gap, but he doesn't have any further CC to keep you in place. Make sure to use sprint when he uses his ultimate. There's really only one item you need to counter Bastet effectively, and that is sprint 2. This will allow you to get away from all her slows, and she does not have much of an ability to chase you. She will always initiate with a jump, and after that she can only jump back, so make sure you don't run in her direction. Other than that, she relies on a slow to get out her damage, so just sprint away and laugh at her. If she gets fed for some reason, which is not that likely at the moment, just consider getting a physical defense item of any kind, because she relies on killing you in her initial burst phase. If that doesn't happen, her auto damage is fairly weak, and her chasing potential when she can't slow you is pretty low. So She will still dish out a lot of damage, but she cannot kill you.
This shall be a day long remembered!
It's time to talk about Bellona, and this time for real. I'm excusing myself in advance for the fact that I'm ignoring that this series is actually called Counter Regard in 2 items, but I want to give you as many options as possible. 2 items that generally counter Bellona are the same ones that counter Bakasura, which is either midgardian mail or witchblade. Slowing the attack speed and also the movement speed, as is the case with midgardian, is extremely strong against Bellona. All her abilities are kind of based on attack speed, except for her 2 and her ultimate, and she cannot kill somebody by bursting said person down with abilities only. She needs some of those autos in there. Now, if Bellona decides to go the slow hammer build, heavy hammer I think it is, then you might want to consider getting winged blade. She has an ability slow and that other slow on top, and Bellonas are known for sticking to you for ages, just dashing out nasty auto attack damage while walking up to you, getting that extra movement speed from the passive and constantly slowing you. Basically, theoretically ignoring the auto attack movement penalty. So everything that helps you getting away from her, especially winged blade in that case, is very good. I wouldn't buy sprint against her. Instead, I'd opt for enfeebling curse. It slows her attack speed and it slows her movement speed, which is crucial to countering Bellona, and is probably the best active you can get against her. So to sum it up, if Bellona goes for slow items, go winged blade. If she doesn't, go for witchblade or midgardian mail, and on top of that, get enfeebling curse as an active if necessary. I hope this actually helps countering her. She's still one of the hardest gods to fight out there. I don't really think you need to counter Cabrakan, but I'm gonna give it a shot anyways. Cabrakan is in a fairly weak state at the moment, so he shouldn't really be that problematic. But if you ever struggle against one, see what's the problem. If the problem is that he sees you too hard, get beats. If that's not the problem, but you can't keep your distance to him, get sprint or one of the slowing curses. Just check what's helpful against the rest of the team as well. But many Cabrakans will get blink because he basically doesn't have a gap closer. And if you can avoid getting hit by his initial stun and let him run into the empty pretty much, then there's really not much he can do. Even in a proper team, Cabrakan just struggles too much to be one of your main targets when it comes to buying counter items in a normal conquest match.
Today we crush our enemies, and the rain shall wash them away.
When it comes to countering, Chaac is a very interesting god because there's so many different ways to build him. Depending on his tankiness or his attack speed whatsoever, you might want to consider building in that direction. But what can generally be said about Chaac is that if you meet him in solo lane, where he mostly is, try to focus on building your own build that helps you later in the game instead of countering him too much. You obviously need some counter items, but still, Chaac is a very passive farmer. He doesn't have the early aggression to really cause you any problems, and in later stages of the game, he just doesn't transition too well. He's not bad, but he's just not that great either. And if you have a character that's great late game, which is the only kind of character that should really struggle against him early, then you're better off preparing for late game. If you absolutely need to counter him, one idea that I have for you is getting boots 3 earlier than you'd usually do it. Simply because his abilities are very slow, especially his 1 is very, very slow. And he depends on his auto attacks, and on getting close to you. If you can stay away from him by just having more movement speed and dodge his one by walking forward when you see it, don't strafe sideways and it will hit you. Just turn in the direction you want to go and walk forward. In most cases, if you have boot 3, you will get out of his one before it lands. And that's a huge problem for Chaac because that ruins his setup, it ruins his poke, and basically sets him back for the rest of the laning phase. On top of that, Weakening Curse is obviously strong against him because it also slows him down, which is a huge problem for him with his limited gap closes. And it stops his healing, which can be quite annoying in some situations. With that, you should definitely be able to shut Chaac down.
You can dance if you want to.
Chang'e is mainly countered by Weakening Curse. Healing is what is the most annoying thing about her, and her dashing, her constant dashing away. So if you can take that away from her, that's a good start for you. On top of that, she has very high lane sustain, which is kind of bothersome. So you'd be better off getting a Gem of Gaia if you're laning against her, simply to improve your own sustain and get some magical defense.
My time is now.
Chronos kind of falls into the same category as Amusen Cup did. You should not primarily try to counter Chronos with items. Chronos is very gankable. He has his ult to reset once, but once that's down, you can just get your jungler to gank again, and he's done. You wanna gank Chronos early, because late game, he will absolutely destroy everything in his path. If you have a team that refuses to gank Chronos and the lane is not going perfectly well for you, then something is going wrong that you can't influence. If you're looking for items to counter him, what I'd recommend is trying to go for enfeebling for curse. A lot of his damage comes from his attack speed and his movement speed, his high mobility when using his 2. If you can take that away from him, he's still scary, but just not as scary. He can still stun you, be aware of that, try to dodge that. He can still deal damage to you with his 1, but his main damage source is gone. You should only use it when he uses his 2. Usually here because he says let's go. On top of that, he's very much countered by Fist of the Gods. Don't get Fist of the Gods just for him though. That's kind of a very situational item because only the jungler can really get it in most games. But he doesn't have any escapes, so locking him in place with a stun for some extra time while his 2 is up gives you that advantage over him, gives you that upper hand that kind of forces him to use his ult right away, and then he loses a lot of his ult because he stays in the same place for longer, which is the time that you stunned him there. This also is pretty problematic for him. In terms of items that counter him, I'd once again recommend Stone of Gaia. It kind of allows you to sustain longer, and it allows you to sustain the burst or the auto attack burst that comes from his 2, out sustaining in lane is very crucial against him because it will set him behind in the long run. That marks the end of this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for the positive feedback for the first episode. Thank you for the criticism. Thank you for the advice and additional info that you had on certain gods, and I hope to see you guys next time. If you leave a like or a sub if you feel like it. If you don't, I don't mind. It's a sloth life after all. Duke Sloth, out.